the beginning of putting a home for sale or why you should sell now or things like that. Today we're going to fast forward into the transaction, right? So you successfully listed your home, and now, with the right agent, the let's go with not just the right agent, but with your favorite real estate agent. So we're here, and time goes on. We have, let's say, X amount of days on market, and then we finally get that offer that you've been waiting for, right? And the good news is that we were able to negotiate. You have a great negotiator here, and they helped you get the number that you were comfortable with. So now you accepted it. So a lot of homeowners, they think that the hardest part of selling is just getting the offer, right? But I always talk about the fact that we really, as agents, earn our pay, earn our fee once we start earning it, once the offer is accepted, once we're under contract, right? Because, well, we'll get into it, right? In a lot of other parts of the country, having an accepted offer means you're under contract. Here in New York, it's a little bit of a different thing, right? So, what I hear most often is the fear, that about what happens after. What happens after you accept the offer, right? Because now you're starting to get locked in, right? So we're gonna walk you through that. Okay, we're gonna walk you through exactly what happens next here in New York, in the five boroughs, in Long Island, and we're gonna walk you step by step. So there's gonna be no surprises for you. You're gonna understand exactly what's gonna be next, right? So if you've ever wondered, what comes after the offer, then just comment after so that I know you're one like I was before I got into the business. Um, all right, so now let's talk about it a little more. Okay, so you've accepted the offer, right? It doesn't mean chaos. Okay, it doesn't mean that things are going to go crazy all of a sudden. Okay, I want you to understand that, to realize that. All right, so when it comes to it, um, you know well, let me show you. Let me go on to the next slide here. Right, so we're going to embrace the journey, right? So accepting an offer, it doesn't mean that chaos starts, right? It means that things start getting a little more structured, a little more predictable. There's going to be a little less interaction between agent and you, because now the stuff is going on behind the scenes, right? So that expectation needs to be set up front when you're first putting the home on the market. At the end of the day, right? It really is the best way to make sure that it's a successful journey for you, because one thing is just, if you don't know what to expect, that's where things start going a little haywire, right? So when you do know what to expect, that's when things feel calmer, because oh, Dave said this would happen, or I should say your favorite agent said this is what's going to happen. So, and it happens. Now oh, okay, so that's A. Now what's B? Well, B, Dave said that this was the next thing that was going to happen, right? So once you have that kind of going step by step, you understand that there's an order to things, right? That things have a bit of a process, and what that process is. So, hold on one second. I'll give you an idea. So it does feel more stable, and even from my perspective, from the agent's perspective, once you have an offer in that's accepted, you know that now we just got into a new car. You're in the driver's seat, but we're in a new car. We're in New York now. We're gonna work more closely with your attorney. Okay, so we'll go into what that means in just a moment, right? but I just want you to kind of, get where I'm going with this, you know. So, all right. So, in New York especially, right? Like I said, we're talking about attorneys and contracts, all right? So that's where we're going with this. So, in New York, and I say this in New York because a lot of times when I get business referred from out of state, people are a little surprised by the order of events, right? So once an offer is accepted, the attorneys are getting involved. So that's the buyer attorney, that's your attorney, the seller, and the contracts are prepared, right? So this is when terms are being finalized. We're talking about price, we're talking about contingencies, we're talking about timelines and responsibilities, right? So nothing moves forward without your approval, right? At the end of the day, that's where we need to go, right? So to give you kind of a brief overview, so the attorney that sets up the contract in New York is the seller's attorney. So you're going to have them looking through everything, making sure that the offer sheet that your agent would give to them, breaking down the terms, conditions of the offer. You know, at that point, when we're talking about having the contracts out, what I like to suggest is that the contracts are sent out only after the inspection is done, right? So at this time, when things are moving and contracts are being sent out and there are no and it's not a fully executed document, we're still not 100% locked into the offer, right? So it's an accepted offer, but it's not a contract. So that's why time is important. That's why, you're making sure that, or your attorney is making sure that everything is reviewed meticulously and that you're updated on all of the changes, the suggested changes that they have for you. They'll put notes on it. They'll send that over to the buyer's attorney. Buyer's attorney will make their notes to it, and then they'll kind of go back and forth as to that. Now, as your agent sitting in the background, they're overseeing all this. They're like the liaison between all moving parts, right? Because now we have the attorneys involved, but we're also going to be dealing with the lender who is going to be reaching out to the buyer. And there's going to be a lot of moving parts, but one thing that, through experience, one of the major things that we see is that if we're not involved, communication could fall through the cracks, details could fall through the cracks, and there can be some issues. So we want to make sure that that's not what's going on, right? And we trust our partners to be doing their job, but at the same time, we have to provide a little bit of that, backup, because sometimes, the other party won't answer, or they won't get back to the entire question that was presented. I'm sure at your job you guys know what I'm talking about. So communication is absolutely critical at this juncture. Okay, so just make sure that and this would be something that we talk about, that a real estate agent shouldn't just be hands off the wheel, and let everybody else drive. And they shouldn't be pushing everybody unless it's an emergency. They need to exercise two things. They need to exercise urgency and patience at the same time, and help you do the very same thing, right? Because you, as the seller, you pretty much, when it comes down to your responsibilities at that point, we'll get into that a little more. But once the contract is okay with all the different changes and you're okay to sign it, now you signed it, and now you're just waiting for the next steps to go through. Let's say there was a repair or something that was noted on the inspection report that you agreed to. Obviously, you would have to do that, or anything that the contract is spelling out. But if not, or if you completed those things, you're just, for the lack of a better term, you're just chilling at that point, right? You hired us, the real estate agent, to oversee these things. And what I see always being a good method of things is to communicate on a weekly basis. Even if there's nothing to report, I like to report that there's nothing to report. So do me a favor, and if you can, just to make sure you're paying attention, comment contract if this part feels confusing at all. So I hope I don't see too many of those. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the inspection, okay? So the inspection is is happening after there's an accepted offer, but before the contract is sent out. Usually and that's what I would recommend, okay? Because you want to make sure that the inspection is used for informative purposes. And I'll tell you a little bit about the inspection, right? So you have usually, now there are times where it's negotiated that there will be no inspection, right? But that's not, you know, in the market that we're in right now, inspections are not usually foregone, right? Like in other markets, some people are like they'll skip the inspection, right? They'll just remove that contingency. But for if you were a buyer, you would want to verify that the house is safe to purchase, that there's no glaring issues, that the roof, electrical systems, plumbing, the foundation, all the critical infrastructure, the bones of the property, the inner workings of the property are in good shape, and that you're not buying, like, for the lack of a better term, by like a lemon, right? So it's not about, you know, finding a perfect house when it comes to inspections. And we try to inform and educate buyers as they come through. It's really about identifying those major issues, like I was saying, right? It's really major structural issues, major systemic issues, and they result mostly, if done correctly, and I'm not saying this across the board, but these inspections, they actually lead to conversations, not deals falling apart. There are inspectors, and I'm not going to name names or anything like that, that could cause a little more nervousness with potential buyers, where they make things seem larger than they are. But at the end of the day, inspectors, are their job is to provide a full report to the buyer about what is wrong with your home, or what they can expect with the home, right? And it might just be, comments like, hey, your chimney is good now, but it's leaning slightly. You might want to, fix this, or speak to, somebody that would fix that ahead of time, before it chips anymore, before it leans anymore, right? And that wouldn't lead to so much of a negotiation or a deal breaking. It would lead more to information about the responsibilities of home ownership for the buyer once the home is theirs, right? So we want to make sure that that's kind of the way that it's presented, the way that we talk about it at the beginning. Now, if there is something that is already wrong with the home, and you already know about it, and um, you're already in the middle of fixing, or you can't fix it, and it's been disclosed to the buyers, pardon me, that's a bit of a different thing, right? Um, that's where that's fully disclosed if there's any kind of material defects, and at that point, that's where negotiation takes place, right? That's where prices can be either reduced, a credit being given at the closing, or just the repair being done, right? So this is where having that inspection report come in, being sent to the attorney, to their attorney, right? They review it. The buyer reviews that inspection report with their agent. They come up with a conversation. Hopefully, the agent, separate from the material defect conversation, you want the buyer and the agent speaking, right? They're gonna just be educating, um, and they, on our side, we want to know we want to understand what they want fixed, or what they're trying to negotiate, and we want to make sure that it's reasonable. Just because they present something doesn't mean you have to accept it, right? So there's going to be things that are reasonable. There's going to be some things that uh, it's worth you addressing, because I always tell my clients in certain situations is, even if you don't continue with this deal, the next buyer is going to come in and their inspector is going to find something else or something similar or the same exact issue. So why not take care of that now, right? And again, it could be addressed in a number of ways, but you want to make sure that this is a stage of the game that we're navigating as smoothly as possible, right? And there are times where the inspection does end up killing a deal, but it has a lot to do with that reasonable ask from their side, from the buyer side, and it also has to deal with the the size of the issue that we're dealing with from a seller's perspective. Is it extremely expensive? Is it something that is wouldn't allow a bank to lend on the property because some things, let's say if it's a structural issue, the bank wants to make sure that they are they have an asset that's protected, right? So they're not going to lend on something that has a serious issue. It would have to be a cash purchase. So there's some things that we need to look at a little more closely, but at the same time, at least now you know that we're talking about, just being reasonable and going through. This is part of that dotting I's, crossing your T's, right? So do me a favor and comment inspection if that's something that you worry about or have worried about in the past. All right, let me know. Okay. So far that's the second step, and this is after the the accepted offer, right? So now after that, now we're dealing with the nitty gritty. Now we're dealing with more of the presence of the agents, the communication between the agents, the communication between, as a seller's agent, I like to oversee everybody. That's the way I envision it. I'm doing this for my seller's best interest. So I'm making sure that I know all the moving parts that have to move, all the different people that need to communicate with each other, and I try my best to ensure that they are communicating and that they're doing it at a level that actually makes sense and that's keeping the deal moving along, right? This part is crucial because now let's say we cleared the hurdle of the inspection, right? We're good to go on that. Now the seller's attorney, so your attorney, has sent over the contract over to the buyer's attorney. All little material changes, all little changes on the contract have been made and everybody agreed to it. Terms and conditions, the price, the whole nine, everything's spelled out in the contract. Once the buyer's the one that signs the contract first in New York. Once that contract is signed by them, they send it back to your attorney with their down payment or their earnest money, and which is held in an escrow account. So it's not held by anybody. It's in an escrow account. Now at that point, your attorney reaches out to you, talks to you about. They go through the contract with you, and then they tell you where to sign. You sign, and now when you have a fully executed contract in New York, now we're talking about a property that is under contract. So everything up to this point, when there were no two signatures on the contract, another buyer can swoop in. If they were going to, offer more than this one, or they had a better terms on their offer or what have you. So that's why speed on everybody's part is important on the buyer side. And also we have to really analyze everything on the seller side, because as much as it's wonderful that somebody's offer might be higher, and this has happened several times in the past, where they just offer higher in order to get into the property and see it. They have FOMO, and then at the end of the day, they back out. And at that point, now if you told these buyers that you were already past the inspection point, about to sign a contract, you tell them that you have somebody else, that other offer ends up walking away. Now you lost one, you lost the other offer. So sometimes, I would say it's better to have, what is it, better a bird in hand than birds in the bush. So it's better to lock onto that offer that you really, really liked, and versus backing off onto something that you don't even know if it's tangible at the end of the day. So that's something that we could talk about in a different scenario, but we're going to keep going into the rest of this deal. Let's just say we have the contract fully executed. So both the buyers and you have signed the contract. Now it's under contract. We put that on MLS as under contract. So now we're not showing. Now nobody else can come in. Right now, that's a legally binding contract. And at that point, if you will, now we're talking about the financing and appraisal. So if you just give me a second. So when it comes to this is mission critical, right? So if the buyers are financing, their lender is going to order an appraisal. So the appraisal is another type of quick inspection, right, from the bank. So this step it's about the property supporting the agreed price. Okay, so basically the bank sends a representative, a third party representative, which is an appraiser. They come and take a look at the property, the inside, the interior, the exterior, and they take note of everything going on, right? Kind of the same way that an agent would go in with you, walk through the house, look at what's going on the inside, the outside, compare apples to apples, two family to two family, same lot size, garage, attached, apples to apples, making sure that you have good comparables. So that price, they're looking to make sure that the bank is in agreement that your home is worth whatever the agreed upon price was, because the buyer is putting a down payment, but the rest of the money is coming from the bank, right? So at this point, that's why honestly, good preparation and proper pricing upfront makes this part, it makes it much more palatable, much smoother. The problem that you have sometimes is when you overprice a home by a lot, or just overpricing in general is a problem. But when let's say you did get an amazing out of this world offer that was so much more than the home is worth, that's where appraisals come in and have issues. They come in short, and that would be an issue, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say in a scenario you accepted an offer for an $800,000 offer, right? So now you're under contract at 800,000. Doesn't matter what the listing price was. $800,000. Now the bank is going to look at comparables, just like your agent did, and they're going to look around and they're going to see, okay, based on what our findings are, your home is actually worth 750. So the accepted price, the under contract price was 800. The bank is saying the appraisal comes in at 750, which means it's $50,000 short. So now, as the seller and buyer, and as the agents, now we have to renegotiate there, because that means that the bank is not going to lend on the 800,000. They're saying it's not worth that. They will lend up to 750. So now the buyer either has to come out with the extra 50,000 out of pocket, or there's got to be some negotiation on the price of the home. Maybe you bring the price down to 775, and then the buyers have to come out 25,000 out of pocket, or the buyers are going to be like, no, the bank said it's 750. That's what we're going with, right? So that's a scenario that can happen, but this is the time where things are going to feel a little quiet, because the appraisal happens. So just to give you a timeline, once you're under contract, this appraisal should happen within a week to 2 weeks, period, right? And during that time, the buyer is dealing with the bank, but the agent, the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, they're communicating. Like I said, as the listing agent, I like to make sure that I know what's going on with those things. So instead of letting banks drag their feet, and sometimes buyers will start shopping for other banks during this time, I like to make sure that I know, hey, did the appraisal come in? Did the appraisal come in? Because that's going to be the first symptom of any kind of dragging their feet, right? So you got to make sure that the appraisal comes in, and that, yeah, we have to make sure that they're doing their job. The appraisal report comes in, and then how did the appraisal, how do we do? Did the appraisal come in for the under contract price, or do we have an issue, right? So if it comes in above the value of your home, doesn't matter. We're good to go. We just need to continue moving forward. If it comes in short, that's where there's going to be an issue. So we want to make sure that we understand the progress is happening behind the scenes, but we also need to know that we really need to keep an eye on things and keep things moving forward, right? And so drop the little eye emojis if you didn't realize that this part takes time, because it does. This is going to take some time, right? This is where, just to give you guys a little more of this is where we talk about New York having 60 to 90 days to close, right? So you put your home on the market, you have this accepted offer we just talked about, you end up going under contract within a week or 2 weeks of getting that accepted offer. Now we're under contract. From all that moment from the minute you got the buyer until closing is 60 to 90 days. You have 60 days plus minus 30, which is where we come up with the 90 days. During that time, all this stuff is happening behind the scenes. The appraisal comes in. Let's say the appraisal went smoothly. Now we're going to continue on this journey where we're not involved on the seller side, but on the buyer side, the bank is asking for additional clarity on whether there was a gift for down payments or whatever, proof of funds. They're asking for a lot of different documentation, explaining X, Y, and Z of the buyer, making sure that everything is good so that they can end up getting a commitment, a loan commitment. On our side, what we are checking in on, or I should say the listing agent, is just checking in from time to time to see how that process is going. One of the things that once we're on the under contract side and the appraisal, we want to make sure that the buyer is filling out their application for the mortgage, continuing on that process, and then giving the paperwork that underwriting is asking for, that is constantly going through. And sometimes the reason that I say the listing agent gets involved is that I've been in situations where the buyer's agent kind of just laid back, relaxed, and didn't really check in on their clients. And that ended up being issues where, either things went wrong or, it was taking too long and they weren't really paying attention. And that's where issues flare up. So instead of allowing that to ever happen again, you learn I was just talking to one of my mentors, every deal is a lesson in some way, shape, or form. So after you get enough of those, now we oversee that and we just check in with them. I don't care if I'm being annoying to the other side. I try to do it in a very professional manner. And at the end of the day, I don't care if they think I'm annoying. What I want them to understand is that my client needs to be taken care of. And I'm not saying this to them, but the way I'm showing it is, hey, how's the application going? Hey, what is underwriting asking for? Hey, sometimes they'll reach out to me. So, hey, underwriting, let me know that they're still waiting for the tax transcript for XYZ. Can you please reach out to your buyer to make sure that's done, right? So, we do those things to keep the deal moving forward, right? Protecting your best interest, that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, let me give you one line that's very true. Time kills all deals. So we want to make sure that we're not letting time just go by. We want urgency and patience at the same time, but urgency has to be it's paramount. So now, once the loan is approved, all conditions are met, which conditions are, like I was saying, paperwork. Let's just call them, different paperwork that they might be asking for, letters of explanation, um, you know, proof of homeowners insurance, whatever it might be. That's underwriting. They're asking for documentation on things. Once all that's met, then we get some of the most wonderful words in all of real estate, which is clear to close. Now, clear to close is saying, hey, the bank is saying, in very plain terms to the buyer, hey, everything's good. The money we promised you that we were going to lend you, we are definitely lending it to you. Now we just need all the attorneys to get in line and set a closing date. So buyer's attorney, seller's attorney, and bank attorney need to get together to schedule that closing date. Obviously, those representatives reach out to their specific clients. They let them know. So sometimes you'll know a closing date before I do. Many times it's the other way around, but a lot of times it's happened where the attorneys don't really communicate with the agents too much. They just go directly to you. So you would let your favorite real estate agent know, hey, I just got word, we're closing on the 26th, right? So that's where we're at. Now there is one very key critical moment when you get the clear to close, because the clear to close, we can almost all start tap dancing, right? But now we need to do what's called the final walkthrough. And I conduct those the day before the closing, the 24 hours, to the day, like morning of the closing, right? So that's where the buyer comes through and they do what's it's known as a final walkthrough. It's the final time that they're going to walk through the house that they're about to buy, but they're not an owner yet, right? So they just want to confirm the home's condition, that it hasn't changed, and that anything that was agreed to after the inspection, right, the fixes or whatever it might have been, the new knobs on the stove, that those things were done, that there was no additional damage, no additional wear and tear. That's why it's important to make sure that the electrical system, plumbing, the water heater, all that stuff is in working condition completely, And once we get a closing, now it's on them. But as long as everything's working till closing, you're good to go, right? And again, make sure you're checking with your attorneys on your specific situation. This is just walking you through what New York is looking like in a situation like this, right? So now at this point, we're just confirming. We're confirming, not renegotiating. So I've seen that in the past as well, where we'll do a final walkthrough. We're walking through the house, and then somebody's going to be like, "Oh, this crack in the window wasn't here." It's like, no, it was here. It was actually disclosed. The house is exactly the way you said you were okay with it, right? So we're not trying to renegotiate. Some people try to do that, and it's really, it can kill a deal. You can have that type of an issue. It's very rare and it shouldn't happen, but it could. Now, on the other hand, if something did break that the seller is responsible to have in working order, now that's a different situation. And it's either renegotiating or we fix it. I've had, for example, where the back left stovetop, the burner wasn't working. Well, I wasn't at the final walkthrough that time, or it wasn't working. I was actually. It wasn't working, and I kept on smelling gas, so I was like, let me hold off. Um, Seller came back that same day. They had somebody that knew how to work these things. They actually just had to clean it, and it worked. So the morning of, he's on the way to the closing. I still had keys. He goes, "Hey, do me a favor. Can you go to the house and just send the video of it working, because it works." So I recorded a video while I was in the house of the burner working. I took that to the closing, and it was brought up at the closing, and I was like, "Look, hey, we took care of it, so there's nothing to see here." And they were all excited because they're not trying to cause issues. They just want to make sure that their home is exactly the way they had it, that they got it the way they wanted it, right? It's exactly in the same condition as when they had that accepted offer. So, yeah, so comment close if you're curious about this stage, because this one's fun, right? Now we get to step five. Now, step five, it's one of my favorites, right? So actually, it's my favorite. It's closing day. So on closing day, there's going to be documents that are signed. So everybody just make sure to do your exercises for your wrists. There's going to be funds that are transferred, and ownership officially changes once everything is done. Right? The checks are cut to who they have to go out to. The agents are paid based on who they have an agreement with, as far as the commission structure. The attorneys get paid, the banks get paid, and by banks I mean the previous, mortgage holder for the seller, if there's any mortgage left. Now the new bank is funding the new loan. So it's money being put on a table, not physically, but and checks are being cut from different accounts. The attorneys are all doing that. They're doing the numbers. They're showing you exactly what you can expect, what every fee is, and you'll get that a few days before that. So make sure before the closing, the attorney is going to tell you what paperwork you need, your IDs, what bills to bring, what to do with your utilities, all that stuff. So that's something that happens there. So depending on your situation, you may close and move the same day, or you plan a smooth transition. So there's a lot of times where the seller moves out before the closing, and but sometimes there is where they move. Usually it's not the day of the closing, unless there's post possession, which means that they're allowing you to stay there an extra a day or two, so you can finish moving. But this is the finish line. This is where, if everything was normal, you have already moved from the home. Usually these contracts say that the home has to be broom clean, and that's it. And then the keys are given to the buyer, and now you and I could celebrate, right? So at the end of the day, the biggest misconception is that everything becomes stressful after you accept an offer, and it really, in reality, the process actually becomes more predictable, especially when sellers understand the steps. So I hope that you understanding the steps helps you feel more confident and helps you feel in control. And of course, if you want a little more hands-on on this, and if you want your favorite real estate agent or soon to be favorite real estate agent to help you with this, please feel free to reach out. You can always text me at 917-982-8899 or call me 917-982-8899, or feel free to DM me or comment below, and we can talk more about the beginning steps all the way to the accepted offer, right? And if selling something is something you're considering now or in the future, I'm always happy to walk you through it. I'm happy to walk you through what this would look like for you, for your specific situation. And it wouldn't be about pressure. Meetings with me are always about clarity, transparency, and just setting expectations, knowing what's going to happen moment by moment. Because as much as I love surprises, I don't love them in business. So, all right. So comment after, and I'll follow up with you privately. Or again, if you want more, even more privacy, just DM me or call text 917-982-8899. All right. So anything you guys need, or if this video is something that you know that someone else could, benefit from, please feel free to share it, because even planning ahead makes everything easier. So feel free to plan ahead and have me here to help you make that a reality, guys. So thank you so much for, for honestly, for being here, for, paying attention to me here, for allowing me to, walk you through this entire process. I know that I went a little quick and in some regards a little slow, but if you guys want more clarity on any part of this or before the accepted offer, what it takes to list the property, etc., I'm always here to be a resource to help you in the best way I can. So please feel free to reach out and, again, share this with anybody that could benefit from, learning what happens after an accepted offer. Again, it all depends on your specific situation, but at least here you'll understand that. And in future videos, I'll go over, what you can expect when thinking about listing your home, when listing your home, once you listed your home, how to know what offer to accept. We can go over all these different things, and help you from that perspective. So please feel free to reach out, guys. Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to share the experience, the knowledge that I many times take for granted, and I hope that you get extreme value out of this, or someone that love, care about, would get value and some help from this as well. All right. So anything that might have been confusing, or you didn't really understand, or you want more clarity on, please feel free to reach out. Hopefully it's before you're even listed, so that I can help you from the ground up. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Catch you on the next one.